"The bill," he barked like she was a dog. Just 2 words, that's all it took. But as she turned his jacket, it slid, and there it was, a glint of silver. Not just any chain. Her chain, the one she thought burned with her family 17 years ago. Now it's nestled in his pocket. Donovan Caldwell, the city's untouchable golden boy, has it, the silver chain and a tiny wooden sparrow. She knows the inscription carved into its wing. He has no clue what's coming, or that her quiet kindness hides a rage fueled by loss. This isn't about a lost tip. It's about a stolen life, and a secret about to explode. "The bill," he barked like she was a dog. Just 2 words. That's all it took. But as she turned his jacket, it slid, and there it was, a glint of silver. Not just any chain. Her chain, the one she thought burned with her family 17 years ago. Now it's nestled in his pocket. Donovan Caldwell, the city's untouchable golden boy, has it, the silver chain and a tiny wooden sparrow. She knows the inscription carved into its wing. He has no clue what's coming, or that her quiet kindness hides a rage fueled by loss. This isn't about a lost tip. It's about a stolen life, and a secret about to explode. That flicker of silver against the dark wool felt like a physical blow. It dragged Maya back 17 years, forcing her to relive the fire and the loss, the utter desolation that had defined her life since. Aurelia's, with its hushed reverence and exorbitant prices, was a world away from the cramped, rent-controlled apartment she called home. Her life was a collection of half-measures and sacrifices, each one a little chip off the bright future that had been promised, then so violently snatched away. At 24, Maya moved through Aurelia's like a ghost, a necessary fixture in the gilded cage. She knew the wine list better than her own dwindling bank balance, could navigate the treacherous currents of demanding clientele with a practiced smile and an almost invisible grace. She was a chameleon, blending into the background, anticipating needs before they were voiced, all to ensure her survival, and more recently, her Aunt Mears. Mere, the woman who had taken her in, not out of love, but out of familial duty. Now Mere was sick, her lungs failing, and the medical bills were stacking up like a looming tsunami. Maya worked every extra shift she could get, enduring the condescending stares and casual cruelty of the city's elite. The tips were often insulting, a pittance compared to the obscene amounts they spent on fleeting pleasures. Back in her tiny apartment, tucked away in a forgotten corner of the city, Maya clung to the few remnants of her past. A dog-eared book of poetry, a reminder of her mother's gentle spirit, and a single faded photograph. In it, a smiling couple embraced a gap-toothed little girl wearing a silver bracelet. Maya traced the bracelet's image every night, the worn silver a tangible link to the parents she'd lost. A promise of a life that had been cruelly stolen by flames and circumstance. The bracelet was simple, a delicate silver chain her father had bought and a small sparrow carved from oak by her mother. Sparrows, her mother had said, were symbols of joy and protection, common but resilient. On the underside of the sparrow's wing, her father had burned a tiny inscription with painstaking care. Emped 7/15/08. The last day they were a family. Tonight, the familiar ache of loss was sharper than usual. A raw wind howled outside her window, mirroring the dread churning in her stomach. As she twisted her dark hair into its regulation bun, she caught her reflection in the cracked mirror. The hopeful girl in the photograph was gone, replaced by a woman with weary eyes and stooped shoulders. She straightened her back, a small act of defiance, a silent promise to fight for Mir, to somehow navigate the impossible. "Wish me luck," she whispered to the smiling faces in the photograph, her voice a fragile prayer against the encroaching darkness. The air inside Aurelia's thrummed with money, a heady mix of expensive perfume and self-importance. It was a full house, the low murmur of conversation, a constant, self-satisfied purr. Maya moved through the tables, her tray held high, her expression a carefully crafted mask of pleasant neutrality. She delivered a perfectly seared duck breast to a banking executive and recited the wine pairing for a surgeon and his wife, her voice smooth and professional. Then they arrived. The purr in the restaurant didn't just quiet, it seemed to hold its breath. Heads turned, whispers rippled through the room like a shockwave. Donovan Caldwell and Genevieve Dubois. He, the golden heir, the face of Caldwell Industries, his image plastered across magazines and business pages. She, the icy beauty, the daughter of a French diplomat, a perfect match for the Caldwell dynasty. Mr. Russo, the perpetually stressed manager, practically tripped over himself to greet them, his usual stern demeanor melting into obsequious deference. Mr. Caldwell, Mademoiselle Dubois, your table is ready. The corner booth, as requested. Maya's stomach clenched. The corner booth, table 12, her section. Brenda, a veteran waitress with kind eyes and a cynical heart, gave Maya a sympathetic look as they passed the service station. Good luck, kid, she murmured, polishing a wine glass. Table 12 is a viper's nest tonight. All show, no substance. It's just another table, Brenda, Maya said, forcing a smile. But it wasn't. From the moment she approached, the air crackled with a different kind of energy, a raw, unapologetic power that made her skin crawl. Good evening, Maya began, her voice steady despite the frantic hammering of her heart. My name is Maya, and I will be your server tonight. May I start you with some water? We have sparkling or still? Donovan Caldwell didn't even glance at her. He was scrolling through his phone, his thumb moving with dismissive speed. Genevieve, however, scanned Maya from head to toe, her gaze lingering for a fraction of a second too long on Maya's worn shoes. A tiny, almost imperceptible sneer touched her lips. We'll have a bottle of the 05, Donovan said, not to Maya, but to the air in front of him, his eyes still glued to his phone. He still hadn't made eye contact. The 05, Maya's mind reeled. The most expensive bottle on the list. A wine that cost more than she made in 3 months. An excellent choice, sir, she managed, her professional training kicking in. The entire meal unfolded as a masterclass in humiliation. They spoke to her as if she were an object, a voice-activated machine designed solely to fulfill their whims. The appetizer was sent back because the temperature was off by a degree. Genevieve found a microscopic speck of dust in her wine glass and demanded a new one with a theatrical sigh. Donovan conducted a loud, aggressive business call in the middle of his main course, barking orders and threats into his phone while Maya stood awkwardly to the side, waiting for an opportunity to clear his plate. Through it all, Maya maintained her composure. She smiled, she apologized, she fetched, she carried. She was the perfect, invisible servant. But inside, a slow burn of resentment was building, fueled by their casual disdain and their utter lack of regard for her humanity. As they finished their dessert, an elaborate chocolate sphere, Donovan shrugged off his suit jacket, draping it carelessly over the back of the plush booth. The movement was arrogant, dismissive. He leaned back, finally granting Maya the courtesy of direct eye contact. His steel gray eyes were utterly devoid of warmth, radiating a chilling indifference. The bill, he commanded, the simple 2 words feeling like a slap. Of course, sir, Maya said, turning to leave. But as she stepped away, Donovan shifted in his seat, reaching for his wallet. The movement jostled the jacket, causing it to slip from the smooth leather of the booth and fall silently to the floor in a heap of expensive wool. Neither Donovan nor Genevieve noticed. They were already engrossed in a quiet, intense argument about some upcoming society gala. Maya hesitated for a moment. Protocol dictated that she should alert the guest, but a small, rebellious spark flared within her. She bent down, her movements swift and silent, to retrieve the jacket herself. It was heavy, the fabric impossibly soft beneath her fingers. She lifted it, intending to place it back on the seat. And that's when the world tilted on its axis. As Maya lifted the heavy jacket, her fingers brushed against the outer breast pocket. Through the fine wool, she felt a small, hard shape. It was lumpy, irregular, and oddly familiar. Her brow furrowed. Most men kept a pen or a pocket square there, something smooth and flat. This felt different. A sudden glint of silver caught her eye. Peeking out from the edge of the pocket, almost completely hidden, was the barest hint of a delicate chain. Her heart gave a painful lurch. It couldn't be. It had to be a trick of the light, a cruel figment of her grief-stricken imagination. Thousands of people own silver chains. She placed the jacket back on the booth, her movements a little too stiff, but her eyes remained fixed on that tiny sliver of silver. Her hand trembled. She had to know. It was an insane, irrational impulse, a complete violation of her job and every rule of professional conduct. But this feeling, it was a magnetic pull, a whisper from a life she thought was buried forever. Donovan and Genevieve were still absorbed in their hushed, tense conversation, oblivious to the turmoil raging within her. The rest of the restaurant faded into a distant blur of noise and light. Maya felt as though she were trapped inside a bubble, the air thick and silent. With a deep, shaky breath, she leaned forward, pretending to adjust the tablecloth. "Excuse me, sir. Your jacket," she murmured, her voice barely audible. Her hand, moving as if with a will of its own, reached for the pocket, her fingers, nimble from years of handling delicate plates and silverware, dipped just inside the velvet-lined opening. They closed around a small wooden object. The texture was unmistakable. The smooth, worn curves of carved oak, the sharp edge of a wing, the tiny bump of a head. Her fingers traced the shape in the darkness of the pocket, a shape she had traced a million times in her dreams. The sparrow, her breath hitched in her throat. Time seemed to slow to a crawl, stretching into an eternity. She could feel the blood pounding in her ears, a deafening drumbeat. This was impossible, a hallucination brought on by stress and exhaustion. Slowly, carefully, she pulled her hand back. Clutched in her palm, hidden from their view, was the bracelet. The silver chain was tarnished with age, but it was the same one. And there, nestled in the center of her hand, was the little wooden sparrow. It was exactly as she remembered it. The same slightly uneven wings her mother had laughed about. The same determined look in its tiny carved eyes. A wave of dizziness washed over her. She gripped the edge of the table to steady herself, her knuckles turning white. She felt hot and cold all at once. The sounds of the restaurant rushed back in a chaotic symphony of clinking forks and oblivious laughter. She turned the sparrow over in her palm, her thumb searching for the underside of the wing, and there it was, faint, almost worn away, but still legible in the dim light. M+D7, 1508. The air left her lungs in a silent gasp. It was real. It wasn't a copy. It wasn't a coincidence. It was hers. Her bracelet, the one piece of her parents she thought was gone forever. And it was here, in the pocket of this cold, arrogant man who had treated her like dirt. How? The question screamed in her mind, a dizzying, terrifying spiral of confusion. How did he get it? Did he find it? Did he steal it? Had he been there, at the scene of the accident all those years ago? A scavenger, picking through the debris of her shattered life. The image was so vile, so monstrous that it eclipsed her shock, replacing it with a sudden, volcanic surge of rage. Her carefully constructed mask of professional detachment didn't just crack. It shattered into a million pieces. The years of repressed grief, of quiet suffering, of biting her tongue while the wealthy and powerful paraded their privilege in front of her, it all coalesced into this one blinding moment. She straightened up, her body rigid, her eyes locked on Donovan Caldwell. The invisible waitress was gone. In her place stood a woman on the brink of combustion. Donovan finally looked up from his argument, his brow furrowed with irritation at the delay in getting his bill. "Is there a problem?" he asked, his tone dripping with impatience. Maya slowly opened her hand. The tarnished silver and dark wood lay stark against her pale skin. Her voice, when it came out, was not the polite, deferential tone of a server. It was low, shaking with an intensity that made the air around them vibrate. "Where?" she began, her voice a dangerous whisper. "Did you get this, Donovan?" Caldwell stared at the bracelet in Maya's hand, his expression shifting from irritation to mild confusion, and then to a cold, dismissive mask. He didn't seem to recognize it. "I have no idea what you're talking about," he said, his voice clipped and bored. He waved a hand as if shooing away a fly. "Now the bill, please. We're leaving." Genevieve leaned forward, her eyes narrowing with disdain. "What is the meaning of this? Are you accusing him of something? You, a waitress?" The contempt in her voice was a physical blow, but Maya didn't flinch. The sight of the bracelet, her bracelet, in the hands of people who embodied everything that was wrong with the world, had ignited a fire in her that years of hardship had failed to extinguish. "This is mine," Bishop Maya said, her voice rising in volume and conviction. She took a step closer to the table, holding the bracelet out for them to see. "This was my mother's. It was lost 17 years ago. I want to know how you have it." A few patrons at nearby tables began to turn, their conversations faltering as they sensed the unfolding drama. Mr. Russo, alerted by the shift in the room's atmosphere, started moving towards them from across the restaurant, his face a storm cloud of panic. Donovan's cold demeanor finally cracked, replaced by a flash of genuine anger. This was causing an unforgivable breach of decorum. "This is absurd," he snapped, his voice a low growl. "I've never seen that trinket before in my life. You probably lifted it from another table and are trying to pin it on me. Security. It was in your pocket." Maya's voice was now a raw accusation that cut through the restaurant's ambient hum. She pointed a trembling finger at the coat on the booth. Genevieve let out a sharp, theatrical gasp. "She's a thief and a liar, Donovan, darling. This is what happens when one dines in places with such common staff." She looked Maya up and down, her eyes like daggers. "You're fired. You must be fired. We will speak to the manager." Mr. Russo arrived at the table, his face slick with sweat. "Mr. Caldwell, Mademoiselle Dubois, I am so sorry. What is going on here?" He turned to Maya, his eyes pleading and furious at the same time. "Jenkins, what are you doing? Get back to the kitchen, now." "She's accusing me of theft," Donovan said, standing to his full, imposing height. He loomed over Maya, a monolith of wealth and power. "I want her arrested. This restaurant's reputation is clearly in the gutter if you employ criminals." "No!" Maya cried, her desperation mounting. "I'm not a criminal. This is mine." She felt frantic, cornered. They were twisting it, using their power to paint her as the villain, to erase her truth, just as they had erased her from their notice all evening. Two burly security guards, usually posted discreetly by the entrance, were now approaching the table with grim expressions. Brenda watched from the service station, her face pale with shock and fear for her friend. She started to move forward, but the head chef grabbed her arm, shaking his head. "You didn't cross people like the Caldwells." "She reached into my pocket," Donovan stated, his voice dangerously calm. "That is assault and theft. I want the police called." "Sir, please, that won't be necessary," Mr. Russo stammered, his career flashing before his eyes. "Maya, give the gentleman back his property and apologize at once." "It's not his!" Maya was shouting now, the sound raw and painful. Tears of frustration and grief streamed down her face, blurring the glittering lights of the restaurant into a cruel mockery. One of the security guards reached for her arm. "Ma'am, you need to come with us." Maya wrenched her arm away, stumbling backward. The bracelet was still clutched tightly in her hand, the little wooden sparrow digging into her palm. It was the only thing that felt real in this nightmare. They were going to take it from her again. They were going to take her parents from her all over again. Panic, pure and primal, seized her. They weren't listening. They wouldn't listen to a poor waitress over a man like Donovan Caldwell. She had one last card to play, one final desperate truth. As the guards grabbed her arms, their grips firm and unyielding, she threw her head back and screamed, her voice echoing through the now silent dining room, a cry filled with 17 years of pain. The inscription, M+D715-8. Ask him what it means. Ask him why he has my father's initials. And the day he died, in his pocket. The words hung in the air, electric and shocking. The patrons stared, their forks frozen halfway to their mouths. Mr. Russo's jaw went slack. The security guards paused, their hands still on her arms, their expressions flickering with uncertainty. Genevieve looked utterly bewildered, her perfectly painted mask of outrage momentarily slipping. But the most dramatic reaction came from Donovan Caldwell. Every ounce of color drained from his face, his arrogance, his anger, his icy composure. It all evaporated in an instant, replaced by a look of stark, undiluted shock. His eyes, which had been so cold and dismissive, were now wide, fixed on Maya, with an expression of horrified recognition. He staggered back a half step, as if she had physically struck him. His lips parted, but no sound came out. The date, the initials. She had not just described the bracelet, she had recited its soul. "Let her go," he said, his voice a choked, unfamiliar rasp. The guards looked at him, then at Mr. Russo, confused. "I said," Donovan repeated, his voice gaining a terrifying edge of authority that had nothing to do with money and everything to do with something far deeper. "Let her go. Now." The guards released Maya's arms. The chaos in the room had suddenly shifted, transforming from a simple case of a disgruntled employee into a tense, unreadable tableau. The silence that followed Maya's scream was heavier, more profound than any noise. In that silence, a 17-year-old secret began to claw its way to the surface. The silence in Aurelia's was a living entity, thick and suffocating. Every eye in the room was fixed on the corner booth, where a world had just tilted on its axis. Maya stood trembling, the ghost of the guard's grip still on her arms, her chest heaving with ragged breaths. Donovan Caldwell stared at her, not as a powerful man looks at a lowly waitress, but as a man looks at a ghost from a long-forgotten grave. Genevieve was the first to break the spell. "Donovan, what is this? What is she talking about? It's just a date. She's hysterical." Her voice was sharp, but a thread of confusion and unease ran through it. Donovan didn't answer her. He didn't seem to hear her. His gaze remained locked on Maya. He took a slow, deliberate step towards her, his movements stiff, mechanical. He held out his hand. "May I see it?" he asked, his voice low and strained. Warily, her heart still pounding with adrenaline and fear, Maya held out her hand, uncurling her fingers. The bracelet lay on her palm, a fragile relic in the opulent room. Donovan reached out. His fingers, long, manicured, and now visibly shaking, hovered over the wooden sparrow for a moment before gently picking it up. He turned it over, his thumb tracing the inscription she had screamed aloud. M+D 71508. A muscle in his jaw clenched. He closed his eyes for a brief, painful second, and in that moment, his carefully constructed facade of power crumbled entirely. When he opened them again, the cold steel was gone, replaced by a storm of emotions Maya couldn't begin to decipher. Guilt, sorrow, and something that looked terrifyingly like fear. "Where is everyone?" he said, his voice a hoarse command directed at Mr. Russo. A hoarse command directed at Mr. Russo. "Get them out." Mr. Russo blinked. "Sir, the other guests, give them my apologies and tell them their meals are compensated. I'm buying this restaurant for the rest of the night. I need privacy. Privacy." Now the tone was not a request. It was the voice of a man accustomed to bending reality to his will. But this time, it was wielded not with arrogance, but with raw desperation. A flurry of activity followed. Check presenters appeared at tables, confused but compliant. The wealthy patrons of Aurelia, sensing a drama far more compelling than their own, began to file out, their whispers trailing behind them. Within 10 minutes, the vast gilded dining room was empty, save for Maya Donovan, a bewildered Genevieve, and a terrified Mr. Russo, who hovered near the kitchen door. The silence that returned was different. It was heavy with unspoken words with the weight of 17 years. Donovan finally looked at Genevieve. "Leave us," he said. "What?" she sputtered, incredulous. "Donovan, I'm not going anywhere. What is going on? Who is this girl?" "Genevieve, please," he said, and for the first time Maya heard a crack in his voice. A plea. "I will explain later. Just go. Wait for me in the car." She stared at him, her face a mask of fury and suspicion, but she saw something in his eyes that made her acquiesce. With a final venomous glare at Maya, she turned on her heel and stormed out, her stilettos clicking like gunshots on the marble floor. Now they were alone. Donovan sank into one of the chairs at the table, the fight seemingly gone out of him. He held the bracelet in his hands as if it were a sacred, terrifying object. "My name is Maya Jenkins," she said, her voice quiet but firm. She would not be intimidated anymore. "My father was David Jenkins. That D is for him. That date is the day he and my mother died in a car accident on the Old River Road. That bracelet was on my wrist an hour before it happened. I want to know how you have it." Donovan didn't look up from the bracelet. The sparrow, he murmured almost to himself. He was so proud of it, he carried it everywhere. Mayer's blood ran cold. Who is he? He finally raised his head, and his eyes were filled with a profound, soul-deep agony. "The D on this bracelet," he said, his voice breaking. "It wasn't for your father." Maya recoiled as if he'd slapped her. "What? That's impossible. My father made the inscription himself. M for Mayer, D for David." "No," Donovan said, shaking his head slowly. "When it was found the boy who had it, he said it stood for Maya and Daniel. His name was Daniel. The name meant nothing to her. A cold dread different from the anger she'd felt before began to creep up her spine. "I don't know any Daniel." "He was my younger brother," Donovan said, his voice cracking. "Daniel called well." The revelation landed with the force of a physical blow. Maya couldn't process it. His brother. How could his brother have had her bracelet? The timeline, the logic. It made no sense. Your brother," she stammered. "But how? I never knew him. Where did he get it?" Donovan took a deep, shuddering breath, the kind a man takes before plunging into icy water. He looked not at Meyer, but at some distant point in the past, a memory replaying behind his eyes. 17 years ago, he began his voice, a low, haunted monotone. "On July 15th, my father, Walter Caldwell, was driving home from a business meeting. Daniel, who was 10 at the time, was with him. They were on the old river road. It was late and it was raining." He paused, swallowing hard. "There was an accident, a collision. My father," he panicked. He was a prominent man. He'd had a drink at his meeting. He couldn't afford a scandal, so he drove away. Maya felt the floor drop out from beneath her. "He drove away?" She whispered the words, tasting like ash in her mouth. A hit and run. The police had always suspected it, but there were no witnesses, no evidence. The case went cold. Daniel was hysterical. Donovan continued, his voice hollow. He saw what happened. He saw the other car. Later, when the news broke about a fatal accident on that road, he was destroyed by guilt. A few days after he went back to the site alone, he snuck out of the house. He was just a kid looking for, I don't know, for absolution. He was searching through the weeds by the side of the road, and he found this. He held up the bracelet. "He found your bracelet in the mud." He saw the M and he knew. The news had mentioned the victim's daughter, Maya. He kept it. It became his secret penance, a symbol of the terrible thing our family had done. He was never the same after that day. He became quiet, withdrawn. He was sick for a long time after a different illness. Something unrelated, they said. But I think the guilt ate away at him from the inside. He died 3 years later. Donovan finally looked at Maya, his eyes swimming with unshed tears. "I found the bracelet in his memory box after he passed. He'd written a note. He confessed everything. The accident. My father's cowardice finding the bracelet. He made me promise to one day find the girl named Maya and return it to tell the truth. But I didn't. I was a coward, just like my father. I was afraid of what it would do to our family, to our name. So I kept it, a reminder of my own failure. I carry it with me everywhere, a secret I never meant to be discovered. The gilded restaurant with its crystal and velvet spun around Mayer. The truth was 1,000 times more monstrous than theft. This man, his family, they hadn't just taken her bracelet. They had taken her parents, her childhood, her entire life, and buried the truth under a mountain of money in 17 years of silence. The chaos that had erupted moments before was nothing compared to the storm now raging inside her. The confession hung in the dead air of the empty restaurant, a toxic cloud that poisoned every memory Maya held dear. The narrative of her life, a simple tragic story of a freak accident, had been a lie meticulously crafted by the cowardice of a powerful man. Her parents hadn't just died. They had been left to die. Maya sank into the chair opposite Donovan, her legs no longer able to support her. The rage she had felt earlier was gone, replaced by a profound Arctic coldness. It was the chilling emptiness of a truth so vast and ugly it was impossible to comprehend. "Your father," she said, her voice flat, devoid of emotion. Walter Caldwell. He was driving. Donovan nodded, unable to meet her gaze. He looked down at the bracelet in his hands. This tiny object that held the weight of two families' destruction? Yes. And he just left them. She continued speaking the words aloud to make them real. He left them on the side of the road. He was a coward, Donovan whispered. He's always been ruled by his reputation, by the fear of losing what he's built. He convinced himself it was a mistake, a moment of panic. He buried it. He made us all bury it. The image of her parents trapped and alone in the dark flashed in Maya's mind. She felt a wave of nausea. The what-ifs were a torrent drowning her. What if he had stayed? What if he had called for help? Would they have survived? Was there a chance? It was a question that would haunt her for the rest of her life. And you knew, Maya, said her voice, gaining a sharp, accusatory edge. All these years you knew. You knew who I was. No, he said quickly, looking up, his eyes wide with desperate sincerity. I swear I didn't. Daniel's note only said Mia. No last name. I didn't know where to even begin looking. There must be thousands of Mirs in this city. Seeing you tonight, I had no idea until you screamed the date. That date, it's been branded into my memory since the day my brother died. For a moment, Maya almost saw him not as the arrogant heir, but as another victim of his father's crime. A boy who lost his brother to a secret that was too heavy to carry. But the moment passed. He had still made a choice. For more than a decade, he had chosen silence. He had chosen to protect his family's name over the truth. Suddenly, the main doors of the restaurant burst open. Striding in, flanked by two men in severe dark suits, was an older man. He had the same sharp features as Donovan, but where Donovan's face held the ghosts of conflict and guilt. This man's was carved from granite. His eyes were chips of ice, his presence sucking all the warmth from the room. It was Walter Caldwell. Genevieve must have called him. Donovan, what is the meaning of this? His voice boomed, echoing in the cavernous space. He didn't wait for an answer, his cold eyes sweeping over the scene and landing on Maya. I received a frantic call from your fiancé. You've caused a scene, emptied a restaurant, all because of her. He gestured dismissively at Maya as if she were a piece of trash that needed to be cleared away. Donovan stood up, placing himself subtly between his father and Mia. Father, this isn't what you think. I know exactly what this is, Walter sneered. A grifter, a nobody trying to shake us down. How much does she want? Name a price, he said, looking directly at Ma. Whatever it is, I'll pay it. In return, you sign a non-disclosure agreement and disappear. You will never speak of whatever fantasy you've cooked up again. The sheer, unadulterated arrogance of the man was breathtaking. He didn't even know the full story. Yet his immediate instinct was to wield his wealth like a weapon, to buy silence to erase the inconvenient. Maya found her voice a thread of steel weaving through the coldness. You can't buy this, she said quietly. Walter Caldwell laughed, a harsh, grating sound. My dear girl, I can buy anything. I can buy this restaurant, this block, this city. I can certainly buy your silence. Father, stop, Donovan said, his voice strained. She knows. Walter's smile froze. He looked from his son's pale, tormented face to the bracelet still sitting on the table. For the first time, a flicker of something, not fear, but a cold, calculating assessment entered his eyes. Knows what? He asked, his voice dangerously soft. Everything, Donovan said. About the accident. About Daniel. This is her. She's David Jenkins's daughter. The confession hung in the air between the three of them. Walter Caldwell's face for a fraction of a second went slack with shock. The mask slipped. Maya saw him for what he was. A scared man, old and terrified of the ghosts he had created. But just as quickly, the mask was back, harder and more impenetrable than before. He took a slow step forward, his eyes rolling into Maya's. The menace was palpable. This was the architect of her ruin. This was the man who had left her parents to die and slept soundly in his mansion for 17 years. So, Walter said, his voice a low growl, the past comes back to haunt us. It seems we have a situation that requires a more permanent solution. He looked at his two suited men, then back at Maya. The implication was clear and terrifying. He wasn't just talking about money anymore. He was talking about ensuring her silence by any means necessary. The Gilded Restaurant had just become the most dangerous place in the world for Maya Jenkins. The threat in Walter Caldwell's voice was not the theatrical bluster of a common bully. It was the calm, chilling promise of a man who had moved mountains to hide a secret and would not hesitate to bury a pebble who threatened to uncover it. The two men with him, anonymous in their dark suits, seemed to quand in the dim light of the restaurant. They were not bodyguards. They were erasers. Their faces were blank, their posture relaxed. Yet they exuded a terrifying potential for violence. Fear, cold and sharp as a shard of glass, pierced through the numbness that had enveloped Mia. For 17 years, her life had been a struggle for survival, a battle against poverty and loss. But this was different. This was a battle against a predator, a man who saw her not as a person, but as a loose thread in the perfect tapestry of his life, one he intended to snip without a second thought. Her breath caught in her throat. The cavernous, empty restaurant suddenly felt like a tomb. But then an image bloomed in her mind, her father laughing as he pushed her on a swing, his voice booming and full of life. Her mother humming a soft tune as she carved the little sparrow, her hands smelling of oak and love. They had been vibrant, real, full of plans and dreams. This man, this hollow shell of power and fear, had turned them into a cold case file. The fear inside Mia did not vanish, but it was joined by a white-hot fury that burned away the paralysis. They had been silenced once. She would not let it happen again. "You're not going to threaten me," Maya said. Her voice trembled, but it did not break. She rose from her chair, a small, solitary figure against the might of the Caldwell Empire, and met Walter's icy gaze. "You're not going to bury this. Not again." Walter Caldwell let out a dry, humorless chuckle, a sound like stones grinding together. "Oh, you have such fire, such misplaced idealism. Let me explain the world to you, little girl. You have nothing, no proof that connects me to anything, no witnesses who will speak against me. You have a rambling, hysterical story and a worthless piece of wood, and you probably stole. It is your word, the word of a penniless waitress with a grudge against mine. Who do you honestly believe the world will believe?" He took a step closer, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial, venomous whisper. "I will paint you as an extortionist, a mentally unstable opportunist. I will drown you in legal fees until you beg for mercy. I will make sure you never work in this city again. I will dismantle your life piece by piece until there is nothing left. Are you beginning to understand?" Each word was a carefully aimed blow designed to break her spirit, but before she could respond, another voice hard as flint cut through the tension. "She won't have to." All three of them turned. Donovan had moved to stand not just between them, but slightly in front of Maya, a human shield. The change in him was startling. The haunted, guilt-ridden man was gone, replaced by someone who had finally agonizingly made a choice. The years of deference to his father had been burned away, leaving behind a core of unshakable resolve. "This is no longer your decision, Father," Donovan said, his voice ringing with an authority that stunned Walter into silence. "You ask who the world will believe." "They will believe my brother." Walter's face contorted in a sneer. "Daniel is dead. He can't speak." "Oh, but he can," Donovan countered, his expression grim. He reached into his inner jacket pocket, not for a phone, but for a worn, leather-bound journal. He held it up. This was Daniel's diary, his real one, the one he kept hidden under a loose floorboard in his room. "You found and destroyed the note in his memory box, but you never found this." He opened it to a bookmarked page. He wrote everything down. July 15th. Dad was driving the Bentley. He smelled of whiskey. The rain was so heavy. We hit them. We hit the blue car. Dad wouldn't stop. He just kept driving. I heard a sound. I think someone was crying. He details everything. Father, the make of your car, the road, the time, his return to the scene, finding the bracelet, his guilt. It's all here. A 17-year-old testimony from beyond the grave. Walter stared at the journal, his face a maelstrom of disbelief and fury. "You treacherous boy," he hissed. "You would betray your own blood, your family. You would destroy everything I have built for you, for us." What did you build? Donovan's voice cracked with the agony of a lifetime of complicity. A company, a dynasty. You built it on a foundation of lies and blood. It's a moralium, not a legacy. Daniel died with this guilt eating him alive. I have lived with it every single day since I found this journal. I am done. No more. He turned his gaze to Maya, and in his eyes she saw not a plea for forgiveness. He knew he was far beyond that, but a desperate offer of restitution. This is not for me to decide, he said, his voice softening. This journal, this truth, it belongs to you. Whatever you want to do, I will support you. If you want to walk into the Central Police Precinct right now, I will walk with you. If you want to give this to the Times, I will hold the press conference myself. I will testify under oath. I will corroborate every single word. The power in the room had shifted entirely. It now rested in the hands of the woman they had dismissed as a nobody. Maya looked from Donovan's tormented face to Walter's mask of pure hatred. The path of vengeance was so clear, so easy. She could picture it. Walter in handcuffs. The company's stock plummeting, the Caldwell name, becoming a synonym for disgrace. The thought brought a brief, satisfying flash of triumph. But then she looked down at the little wooden sparrow on the table. She thought of her mother, a woman who found beauty in common things, who believed in building, not destroying. What would she want? What would justice, true justice, look like to her? Vengeance felt hot and final, but it was an ending. It wouldn't bring them back. It wouldn't heal the wound in her soul. It would just create more ruin. Slowly, deliberately, she looked past Donovan and directly at the architect of her pain. I don't want your money, she said, her voice clear and strong. And I don't just want you in a cage. That would be too easy. You would become a martyr to men like you everywhere. Now your payment will be in daylight. It will be a living penance. She took a breath, the idea forming, solidifying into a demand that was more profound than any prison sentence. First, a public admission, a full, unvarnished confession in your own words of what you did on July 15th, 2008. Second, you will use your tainted money for something good. You will fund in its entirety a new state-of-the-art trauma wing at City General Hospital. It will be named the David and Laura Jenkins Wing for emergency care. It will be a place where the next time someone is left broken on the side of a road, they have the best possible chance to live. Your shame will be the foundation for their hope. She then turned her eyes to Donovan. And you will run it. You will sever ties with Caldwell Industries. You will spend the rest of your life at the head of the foundation that oversees that wing. You will dedicate your future to building something that saves lives to counter the legacy of a family that took them. Walter Caldwell looked at her aghast, his mind reeling. She wasn't demanding his destruction. She was demanding his transformation into a symbol of his own failure. A public confession, a monument to his sin, with his victims' names carved on the front. It was a sentence of lifelong humiliation, far worse than the quiet anonymity of a prison cell. He opened his mouth to refuse to rage, but then he saw the look in his son's eyes and the leather journal in his hand. He was beaten. The architect of ruin had been completely and utterly outmaneuvered. The aftermath was a carefully managed earthquake. Donovan, true to his word, orchestrated the confession. It was a televised statement with Walter reading a pre-written lawyer-approved text, his voice monotone, his eyes empty. Donovan stood beside him, his own face etched with a grim mixture of sorrow and resolve. The fallout was immense. The Caldwell name was irrevocably tarnished. Genevieve Dubois vanished from Donovan's life with a single icy phone call, her revulsion at the public scandal palpable. Walter Caldwell retreated into his mansion, becoming a recluse, a king in a self-imposed exile, forced to watch from his window as his son began the slow, arduous process of dismantling his corrupt legacy. The Jenkins wing became a reality with surprising speed. Maya, who had quit her job at Aurelius the morning after the confrontation, was offered an administrative role at the new foundation. She took it. For the first time in her life, she walked into a job not out of desperation, but with a sense of purpose. Her relationship with Donovan remained a landscape of complexities. There was no romance, no easy forgiveness. There couldn't be. He was a living reminder of what she had lost, and she was a living reminder of his family's sin. But in the quiet offices of the foundation, in the shared work of building something from the ashes of their past, a different kind of bond formed, one of mutual respect, of shared penance, of two survivors navigating the wreckage of a single fateful night. One crisp autumn afternoon, a year later, Maya stood before the newly dedicated Jenkins wing. The marble plaque bearing her parents' names gleamed in the sun. She reached into her pocket and her fingers closed around the little wooden sparrow. It no longer felt like a phantom limb, an ache of something missing. It was just a memory now, a reminder that the most chaotic storms can be survived. And the true justice isn't always about endings. Sometimes it's about the difficult, painful, and ultimately hopeful act of beginning again. The story of Maya Jenkins isn't just about a lost bracelet. It's about the collision of two worlds and the explosive power of a long-buried truth. It's a testament to the idea that no amount of wealth or power can permanently silence the past. Maya's journey from an invisible waitress to an agent of justice reminds us that courage isn't about the absence of fear, but about speaking your truth even when your voice shakes. It poses a difficult question. What is the true meaning of justice? Is it punishment, or is it the painful, difficult work of rebuilding something better from the ruins? If this story of resilience, redemption, and the fight for truth resonated with you, please take a moment to hit that like button. Share it with someone who needs a reminder that even one small voice can make a powerful difference. And most importantly, subscribe to our channel for more real-life stories that uncover the extraordinary hidden in ordinary lives. Thank you for listening.